Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter/X at RealBirdLawyer, on Blue Sky at BirdLawExpert, and here with me, as always, my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Witt on Twitter/X, on Blue Sky at Taylor and Witt. It is the playoffs, and we are celebrating a Chiefs playoff victory over the Miami Dolphins. How are you doing, buddy?
Playoffs. Jim Moore a bit never gets old. Doing great, fantastic, amazing. It's that time. It's mid-January, and for the last 6 years, that's been the most wonderful time of the year, and this is no different.
Can you imagine how terrible mid-January would be, and how terrible mid-January was before Patrick Mahomes came?
I can't imagine it.
I mean,
I can remember it.
It used to be that mid-January would be the week after the Chiefs got eliminated, either in the last game of the regular
If
season
we were
or
lucky.
the first round of the playoffs, right? And
Yeah.
it would be, 18 below zero for a week on end, and we would have nothing to do except, hope that the Broncos or the Patriots or whoever we hated got
Yeah.
eliminated from the playoffs in
Hate
embarrassing
watch.
fashion. We'd
Yeah.
just be hate watching the playoffs. Fantasy would have been over. I mean, this is objectively a terrible time of the year.
Brutal. We're lucky that our listeners are in our same boat, I would imagine. No enemy, no people that have been eliminated are listening to this show, which means that we can all celebrate for a little bit longer.
I love that. We've got a great show for you guys today. We've got news. We've got a recap of the Chiefs' victory over the Miami Dolphins on Saturday. And then we've got a conversation with our friend Rany Jazayerli. It is an annual playoff tradition on this show that the great Rany from The Ringer will be joining us. We're going to talk about Miami with him. We're going to talk about Buffalo with him, but that's how we're going to close the show out. Let's get started with the So we got some minor transaction news here. Linebacker Cam Jones is going to the IR. Linebacker Cole Christensen signed to the 53-man roster from the practice squad. We've got cornerbacks Kelvin Joseph and wide receiver Shee Smith signed to reserve future contracts, and signed to the practice squad safety Trey Dean. The major transaction news, the one that makes you kind of raise your eyebrows a little bit, perk up your ears a little bit, is that wide receiver Sky Moore is designated to return from the injured reserve. Doesn't mean he'll be back this week. It doesn't mean that he'll be back next week. It doesn't mean that he'll ever be in a Chiefs uniform again, but it means that it's possible that he could perhaps possibly return. Any of these transactions catch your eye?
Well, I mean, first, let's definitely talk about Sky Moore. I do think that he kind of gave the Chiefs an easy out with an injury for the last couple weeks, because it was getting harder and harder for the Chiefs to play him, to give him significant playing time, despite him being a young second-round wide receiver that they wanted to develop, they needed to develop. And, his struggles then combining with the injury just made it very easy for the Chiefs to just write him off, throw him on IR, forget about him. Now, the 21-day practice window's opening, which, you're getting down to the point where 21 days from now is basically the Super Bowl. So, right, it's fine. Right. They're either gonna they might as well start to activate it now and see how he looks over the next couple of weeks physically. I just find their handling of him moving forward to be so interesting, because if they play him like almost at all, like really, I'm talking like even 5 to 10 snaps, then like I think there's a decent chance that they consider him to be part of this team moving forward. But if they activate him and then he sits on the bench and, Richie James and Justin Watson and all those guys are getting run in front of him, I just think that signifies the last days of Sky Moore are here. So I'm certainly interested in that. But I did want to just bring up this, the last thing, the practice squad edition of Trey Dean. The Chiefs signed him, and he was a Jets player all year. And what I found the most interesting on this is that the Jets wanted to sign him to a future deal, but he instead declined their futures deal and became a free agent. And reportedly, multiple playoff teams offered him a practice squad deal, and he chose the Chiefs among the multiple playoff teams. So, I mean, that's just a guy that his relative athletic score was 8.62. So he's in the 86th percentile among safeties, and player out of Florida, young, 2023 draft. Certainly a guy that, is a fun little project guy, just like what we see Brett Veach pick up all the time in these types of moves. But my ears perked up when I saw that multiple playoff teams wanted him, because that means it's not just like dumpster diving here. Like, some GMs that are good at their jobs considered him a pretty good commodity.
Well, not only that, but if you have multiple playoff teams interested, I mean, you just set the season is essentially at this point it's 3 more weekends of games. You've got the Super Bowl bye week in there. It's all going to be over in a month. So for multiple playoff teams to be interested in his services, I mean, those teams have to have an idea of how to use him. They must think that he might be able to contribute something to a playoff team. And obviously, coming in as a safety and playing for Steve Spagnuolo, that's probably not going to happen.
Right.
But that relative athletic score, 86 percentile for a strong safety. I mean, that's a guy that to me screams possible special teamer. And
Sure.
with the infrastructure that the Chiefs have in place, Dave Toub, all of his guys, whatever you want to say about him, he's been mostly fine this year. And the Chiefs have, they've got an established system in place, and special teams are not that complicated. I mean,
Nope.
like he could come in conceivably and get some special team snaps on the coverage team or as gunner. Right,
well, buddy, I
so
have good news for him. 283 special team snaps just opened up with the IR of Cam Jones. So like,
sure.
that's a hole. They got to fill that hole. So they literally might have just pulled a special teamer off, and
Sure.
if that's
and
the
an
case.
athletic special teamer that's got
That's
some
right.
pop.
Yeah, sure. I'm into it.
Yeah, 98th percentile bench, by the way. So a guy that's got some oomph to him, some hitting power. In other news, let's talk about the injuries now, and let's talk about the Bills' injuries too. We didn't want to muddy up our conversation with Rany with the minutia of the injury reports for these respective teams, but the Chiefs are looking pretty good. Derek Nottie did not practice on Wednesday. We're recording this on a Wednesday night. Game is Sunday night. He has a triceps injury, did not practice. Everyone else was limited or full. Sky Moore, who's obviously back in his 21-day practice window, was a limited participant. Kadarius Toney, a limited participant. Justin Ross and L'Jarius Sneed, limited. And Sneed has kind of been off and on the injury report all year. That doesn't seem to be...
they're babying him a little bit.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be incredibly concerning. But everybody else was a full go. Now, on the other hand, the Buffalo Bills injury report is a little bit more dire. They had 8 players who did not practice on Wednesday. Now, Leonard Floyd and Von Miller, 2 of their pass rushers, did not practice for rest specifically, but the other 6 are dealing with injuries, and some of these guys are dealing with potentially some pretty significant injuries. If you watch the game on Monday, Terrell Bernard, their linebacker, who I think led the team in tackles last year, he has an ankle injury that looks like it's pretty serious. I'd be floored if he was able to suit up in this game.
Agreed.
Especially with the weather being, again, cold and potentially snowy out there.
Well, he was carted off. You almost never get carted off, and then you're ready to go by
come
Sunday.
back 6 days later. Right. Yeah. That's a tall order. Gabe Davis, obviously the putative wide receiver 2 on this team. I mean, really, we'll get into that with Rany, but he did not practice with a knee injury. I don't know how serious that is. We'll have to see how that shakes out.
He didn't play in their last game. I think he's pretty banged up.
Sure. And Christian Binford, one of their cornerbacks, who really is one of the next man up guys. He did not practice with a knee injury. And Rasul Douglas, the cornerback who they acquired at the deadline to really beef up and who had a great play for them down the stretch, he was a limited participant, so he'll probably go. But they're banged up in the secondary. They're banged up at linebacker. They're banged up at wide receiver. They've got 2 older players in Leonard Floyd and Von Miller who are getting rest days, veteran rest days. I mean, Von Miller was a healthy scratch towards the end of the season, so I don't know how much that matters.
He was a healthy scratch even when he was on the field.
Exactly. I don't know how much that matters. And then their punter, Sam Martin, did not practice with a hamstring injury. That's kind of a little bit interesting because, and not that special teams are the end all be all, but like things can be wacky when you're having to bring in a punter off the street and you've got to fly him into Buffalo, which apparently is impossible because they just don't have the infrastructure to be able to clear snow and allow airplanes to land and that sort of thing. I mean, to bring a guy in at this point in the week, it's possible, but there's always the possibility that punter could screw something up. A lot of times the punters are the holders for the kicking unit, which obviously raises some issues there.
Well, that's what happened here. So their kick got blocked against the Steelers, and Martin, the holder, got blown up on the blocked kick play, hurt his hamstring, and then they put him in the game after that to punt. It's a hamstring injury. And he punted and then immediately grabbed his hamstring after
and that was in, I mean, frigid conditions. I mean, like,
yeah, it was snowing, and so it's interesting that if they let him punt and now he's not even able to practice today on Wednesday, I just wonder if he aggravated or aggravated it worse by going back out there after the play where he got injured. Just a really strange and interesting situation. And he's a good punter, so like I'm very interested in what they're going to do there.
a good punter. And I mean, again, not to beat a dead horse, but we saw last year. Now Butker was dealing with an ankle injury too, but like we saw last year, there was a ton of conversation in Chiefs Kingdom about the importance of the punter as holder for a kicker. And there were certain people over the last couple of years, including former Chiefs All-Pro punter Dustin Colquitt, who were blaming Tommy Townsend for his holding, and that was part of the issues with Butker struggling in the kicking game. So I mean, playoff games usually are tight. They often can come down to a couple points here and there, whether it's an extra point, whether it's a long field goal that you got to have to tie the game late or whatever. Like having a guy in there that hasn't held for you as the kicker could potentially be big as well. So
not like those kicks are going to be big in the playoffs, right?
Right. Not like Buffalo has ever experienced any high-profile kicking issues in the playoffs before.
You had to do
that
it.
Would never happen to a Buffalo Bills team.
No,
so I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, Bills fans. If you're listening, everything's going to be just fine.
Boy, you took that conversation wide right, didn't you?
Sure did. Speaking of things that went just fine, let's talk about the game on Saturday. Chiefs win 26-7 over the Dolphins in the fourth coldest game in NFL history. We are going to hit this game with our friend Rany, but before we do that, let's just get right into the Chiefs system.
Let's do the Chiefs system. The Chiefs system is the system that the Chiefs utilize when they win NFL football games. You know it. You love it. It's the acronym-laden, Always Sunny in Philadelphia inspired system that is create drama, handle adversity, inspire hope, engage physically, finish strong, and separate entirely. That's the system. And of course, the system starts out with C, create drama. And I mean, what do you have to do to create more drama in the playoffs? It's a playoff game. Tyreek was coming back to town. The temperatures were completely insane. And as you said, fourth coldest game in NFL history. It was the debut of the Peacock exclusives on NBC, which was certainly dramatic for all the people that had to go give NBC an extra $5.99. And of course, the Chiefs are dealing with their own drama with just their expectations. They're the Super Bowl champs. They've been down this year. For all the lack of, I guess, drama, not only in the outcome of this game, but in the really the lead up to it, I didn't quite think there was a lot of drama about Chiefs v Dolphins specifically, but just putting this team into a playoff atmosphere, given what we've seen out of them so far this year, which was crazy and disappointing, and all the things that we know about the 2023 Chiefs, drama was certainly created right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the drama was this team playing in a playoff game, and we obviously expected the Chiefs to win against Miami, but you never really know. I mean, the Chiefs no-showed against the Raiders on Christmas Day. They ruined Christmas. That was
2 weeks before that.
That was 3 weeks ago.
Right,
that was 3 weeks ago. Right, 2 weeks before this game. Mm-hmm. So, and if you look back at the history of the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs in the playoffs, 2018 they had a bye and they were playing in the divisional round, and they played against the Colts, a team that was not even a division winner that year, a wild card team. In 2019, again, they had a bye. They didn't play until the divisional round. They played against the Texans. In 2020, they had a bye. They didn't play until the divisional round. In 2021, they played their first wild card game in the Patrick Mahomes era, and it was against the 7th seeded Pittsburgh Steelers, who they absolutely waxed 42-21. Right.
Big Ben's retirement party.
No one expected that game to be remotely competitive, and it wasn't. And in 2022, they again had a bye, and they didn't play until the divisional round. So this was really the first game in the Patrick Mahomes era. It's only the second game where they were even playing on Wild Card Weekend. And this is the first time they've faced what you might be able to argue was a semi-competent team on Wild Card Weekend. So, of course, there's drama, because this team was a turd for much of the regular season. Doesn't get more dramatic than that.
They most certainly were a turd, unfortunately, but they have polished that turd up before in the perfect right time before the playoffs. So how do you polish a turd? You handle adversity. And the Chiefs handled adversity by opening this game up in frigid conditions with an offense that had been struggling against an offense that, everyone expected to be able to compete right with the Chiefs. And they opened it up with a 9-play, very nice 69-yard touchdown drive after 2 incompletes to Kelce and Rice to start the drive. Balls that looked like were just not gripped well by Mahomes. Not really, one of them just hit Kelce and he dropped it. The other one was a kind of an overthrow. But then after that, they figured it out. They go 11 yards to Kelce on 3rd and 10. Then Pacheco picks up 4 and 10 on back-to-back plays. Kelce with a quick little 8-yarder. Pacheco rips off a 23-yarder and looked like he was already in, exact form that you expect out of Isaiah Pacheco. He gets another 2, and then on a crosser, Mahomes hits Rashee Rice for an 11-yard touchdown. Absolute picture perfect opening drive. No plays for anyone but the 3 best offensive players on the team. And then just to add on to handling some adversity after that initial touchdown, the defense responds with a quick 3-and-out by Miami on 2 1-yard runs and an underneath throw that went nowhere. So, talk about stepping up for the moment, for the both the temperature and the expectations for this. They came out on offense and defense, played complementary football, played complete, dominant at times football. It was everything you could ask for on the opening first drives by the offense and the defense.
Yeah, I think 2 observations there. I mean, number one, the offense looked like a normal offense. Like it didn't look like a team playing in the 4th coldest game in NFL history. The first couple of throws, the ball does kind of die in cold weather. Like it gets really hard. And I have heard people who know about such things say that when you're throwing in cold weather, the quarterback sort of has to adjust and put a little bit more loft and zip on those passes, because it's going to just sink on you.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure goes down. I'm not a scientist, but
yeah,
you know what I mean.
We're not here for that.
But Miami came into this game really banged up on defense, and the Chiefs had a great opening drive against Miami in Germany, and then scored one other offensive touchdown the rest of that game, and didn't score in the second half. And that was really the game that he was like, all right, this is a problem. The Chiefs are not good in the second half. The offense really is struggling right now. So I was encouraged by that, but a little bit sort of cautiously optimistic, I would say. The defense, on the other hand, I mean, Miami was certainly coming from 60, 70-degree weather in Miami, where they've been practicing for the week, into the 4th coldest game in NFL history. They were going to have to handle some adversity, and they didn't. But they were at least at close to full strength. And so for the defense to come out and get a 3-and-out and really just, shut Miami down from the get-go was definitely adversity handled by the defense.
Yes, it absolutely was. And then, of course, after you handle adversity, you have to inspire hope. And on Miami's second offensive drive, a Tua overthrow into rotating safety coverage ended their drive. The Chiefs march right down the field after that. They add to their lead, their 7-0 lead, with another field goal. And at this point, I'm watching the game. I'm feeling pretty relaxed, pretty good about the Chiefs' ability to sustain drives on offense and to contain the vaunted Miami offense themselves. They just seemed really focused and motivated. The rotating safety coverage was one that just was hilarious. Spags being in his bag, where they start off too high, they show single high, and then at the snap, they re-rotate back to the too high. And Mike Edwards, who was the safety over top, is the one that ends up, picking off the overthrow. And just, you could tell that the game plan was sharp and the players were executing. It was firing on all cylinders. I got to tell you, I haven't been inspired many times by the 2023 Chiefs, unfortunately, but I felt pretty inspired after that offensive defense so far.
Yeah, so did I. I mean, it again, like, it wasn't enough for me to say, look, game over, this is the old Chiefs, we're back.
Right.
But there were not very many times this year when the Chiefs had a great offensive drive bookended by 2 dominant defensive stands. And so to get that sequence of plays, it really did feel like maybe this team flipped a switch. Maybe this team has another gear that they've been holding back, that they finally, in the playoffs, have been able to reach. So definitely inspiring to me as well.
Yeah. They certainly, it's just crazy stringing together drives like you talked about is something that's been so few and far between this year. Just remarkable to see that they could never get on the same page. The moment the offense would start to click a little bit this year, it always felt like the defense took the foot off the gas and gave up points right back. And then vice versa, the defense would be pitching a shutout and the offense couldn't find their ass with either hand. So certainly nice to see everything kind of working at the same time, and what better time than the playoffs. And of course, in the Chiefs system, after you inspire hope, you have to engage physically. Let's talk about that helmet, shall we? The Mahomes scramble inside the 5-yard line in the third quarter. The Chiefs were already leading 16-7. It was a 2-score lead before he hit that scramble down to the 5. Resulted in a giant chunk of his helmet just cracking off in the cold. You don't really probably stress test these helmets in 5 degrees below ever, I would assume, or certainly maybe one person did it one time, but it's not something that the helmet companies are super prepared for. But it created that iconic look of Mahomes at the line of scrimmage barking out stuff with just a hole in his helmet. I mean, it's insane. He had 2 rushes in this game for 41 yards. He had a 28-yarder down the sideline that was pretty vintage Pat, looked a lot like that Titans touchdown, from 2019. But then, of course, this scramble here, both extremely well timed and executed. They're big game moments. I mean, cold game king, right? This dude is unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best part about this, and it's okay to say this because he's fine, he didn't get hurt, but he didn't want to come out of the game. He knew he cracked his helmet. Like, he knew that it was cracked. Everybody in the huddle was telling him, like, bro, your helmet. And he's like, I'm not coming out of the game.
You think he didn't feel a wind gust through that hole?
Yeah, right.
Like, jeez.
You, of course, saw every fan base that isn't a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs complain about the fact that he was able to go off the field, get a new helmet, and come back on without taking time out. Guess what? That's the rule. You don't have to take it. If you get the play in on time,
well, they stop the play
snap the ball. I get it, but the refs are able to stop the play at their discretion.
They are.
They did that. It was like a 10-second stoppage.
Man.
They got his helmet out there, and frankly, it really benefited the Dolphins because they ended up having to kind of rush that play.
Yes.
Because the refs didn't stop the clock immediately, right? They didn't have all the time left on the clock, but the Chiefs do. Well,
Pat was putting on the wrong helmet. He was messing with it. He goes up to the line of scrimmage. It doesn't fit right. It doesn't have all of his measurements and stuff. I mean, you could tell on that throw, and it was it had been sitting in the cold, so his head's freezing. I mean, look, it's definitely not an advantage to crack your helmet. Like, that is not anything that the Chiefs benefited from. And in fact, they didn't score on that drive. So, I mean, they kicked a field goal, but they didn't score a touchdown. So, the bitching on that, this comes with the territory. This is something that I'm sure Patriots fans would be able to educate us. It is desperate. That's the whole point. That's the point.
This was one of the. I saw a tweet about this that was like, this is the first time in NFL history that someone's been able to change their equipment without a timeout. And it's like, first of all, definitely did not research this.
No, it's not true.
Most certainly is not true.
No.
But also, like, how desperate do you have to be to make this into the thing that you're complaining about? I mean, it's because they see the writing on the wall. And they knew that the Chiefs were going to finish this game out, and they did.
Yeah, it was a 19-point victory, and people are bitching about a 10-second pause while the quarterback puts on a freezing cold helmet. I just don't understand it. But, of course, as you said, they do finish. They finish strong. That's the F. How about a second half score of 10-0 Chiefs? That's been a while since we've said something like that. It's been lackluster second half performances the whole year. They've struggled on offense. They've given up a couple scores when they've had some leads. For example, 14-0 Dolphins in the second half in Germany. So it was great to see this team put the hammer down in the second half on both offense and defense. The offense didn't really have a ton of chances in the second half. Both teams were kind of sustaining longer drives. So they really had 2 drives on offense until 6 minutes left in the game when they were blowing them out. And those 2 drives were a touchdown and a field goal. So offense did their job there. By the time they punted, they're up 19. There's no drama left. And just loved how the mentality there of going and continuing to execute. The last touchdown, the Pacheco touchdown on the direct snap to him where he faked to Mahomes. And I mean, that was one where that looked like Andy in his bag, like very vintage. Like Chiefs are going to actually step on someone's throat for the first time in
Sure.
what seems like a whole year at least. I mean, certainly it's been a minute since the Chiefs have kind of exerted their will in the second half, but boy, did they finish strong in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably the most complete game the Chiefs have played all year, with the exception of
Certainly.
The Bears game, which hardly even counts. I mean, the Bears were like
Yeah.
barely even an NFL franchise at that point in
They were
time.
struggling. They just
They
had their defensive coordinator get like raided by the FBI, and the Chiefs
yeah,
had the Taylor Swift thing
yeah,
going.
sure,
So,
the
like,
Taylor Swift bump,
I mean, that
exactly.
was always going to be a blowout.
I mean, this was like, you have to go back to that Pittsburgh Steelers game on Wild Card Weekend of the
Sure.
2021 playoffs for the last time the Chiefs won by this margin or anything close to this margin in the playoffs, 42-21 over the Steelers. They beat the Bills in overtime in that playoffs, and then lost to the
Mhm.
Bengals in overtime in that playoffs. But really, like,
Barely beat the Jags. I
in
mean,
it since the Tampa Super Bowl, I mean, since that season, they've had two games where they won by multiple scores. One was the AFC Championship game in 2020 where they beat the Bills by 14, and then that Steelers game. But for the most part, the Chiefs are playing close games in the playoffs, and this felt so comfortable because
yeah.
both sides of the ball were playing at a high level. Really, this was, I mean, complimentary football. And on the biggest stage they've been on to date in the season, you love to see it. It was so, I almost had forgotten what a
Yes.
completely stress-free Chiefs win felt like, because it had
Yes.
been so long since we had one. I mean, really, the Bears game, I didn't even get to fully enjoy it because in my market, they cut away at like the first drive after halftime. I didn't
Oh,
even get to
yeah.
watch the second half. So it was so one-sided that I didn't even watch the whole game. So this was literally like the most comfortable I've been sitting down watching the Chiefs win wire to wire in like 2 years.
Yeah, it was definitely a different experience than what the Chiefs had been used to recently since the Pittsburgh game, the 42-21 win. Their four next playoff wins, as you said, were by 7 points or fewer, seven over the Jags, six over the Bills, three over the Bengals, and three in the Super Bowl over the Eagles. And then you got this 19-pointer. So it was definitely I love the lack of drama. I was really kind of pretty tense going into the game. Not really maybe as much as I would have been in like past AFC championships and Super Bowls by any means, but like I was wondering which Chiefs team we were going to see. I didn't
Sure,
know
of
if this
course.
team was going to show up. Nobody did. And by like the second quarter, I was like, "Oh, the good Chiefs showed up." Like that it's nice to see that they're still there. And of course, the good Chiefs did this better than anybody. They separated entirely. That's what the hammer, the bullet point of when the Chiefs are on is they finish. They finish games, whether that's coming back and separating entirely by just being the better team in the fourth quarter or just making sure that the other team doesn't. And this was kind of a slow burn separation. They turned a 10-7 advantage into the 26-7 final score. They basically, after they went up, or after the Dolphins scored the long touchdown to cut it to 10-7, they kicked two field goals to end that first half and then a touchdown and a field goal in the second half. And that was the separating. But what really caused the ability to separate was the defense. Miami did nothing against this defense all game. There was one broken play, underthrown bullshit touchdown to Tyreek Hill, which we've been the benefit of those before, so you can't complain
Sure,
about them too
right.
much. But
Yeah.
certainly that was not something where you go like, oh my God, if the Dolphins are going to do this all game, we're in trouble. Like they couldn't do that all game. And in fact, they didn't. The the running back duo of Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, who are extremely talented, very fast, two of the most, productive 1-2 running back duos that the NFL's seen in a while. They finished with a combined 14 carries for 42 yards, a paltry 3 yards carry. They never broke a long one. They never looked like they were imposing their will. They never looked like, outside, inside, it didn't matter. The Chiefs were completely on top of the running game. And outside of the one long one, Tyreek and Waddle combined for the rest of their plays after the 1 for 53. The other plays were 6 catches for 40 yards
It's
combined
crazy.
for those two, which
Unbelievable.
most of that was even most of that 40 yards was Waddle in garbage time in the fourth quarter. So, he was sitting at, I believe, 17 yards before that fourth quarter started. This was I went back and, those four players have been, fantasy football dynamos this year. They've been, the Miami offense has been, something to behold for a while. But this was the 8th game that all four of those guys played together. Achane was hurt for a little bit and Waddle was hurt for a little bit, but this was their 8th complete game. It was their lowest combined output in rush attempts, in rushing yards, in receptions, and receiving yards. And Miami has gone 4-14 on the road against teams that finished above 500 since the start of 2021. So they can't really play good teams on the road in general. 4-14 is awful in that, especially given Miami's level of talent on that roster. Like it's not like this has been a bottom feeding team. They've had Tua and those guys and Waddle and Tyreek, and they just can't go on the road against a good team. And finally, they have lost 10 of their last 11 overall against teams, home or road, that have finished above 500. Their only win of that 10 out of 11 was a 2-point Christmas Eve win at home over the now defunct Dallas Cowboys. So, Chiefs separated entirely on that team. They this was the Miami offense all game. This was every drive. Okay, punt, interception, 2-play broken coverage touchdown, 4th down, punt, 4th down. Miami, RIP.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, S is my favorite part of the system, and
Yeah,
I mean, again, this was the Chiefs' S as hard as they've S'd in a long time in this game. I mean, the broken play. Obviously, McDuffie was really broken up about that after the game, and basically said that's the only reason we didn't put up a 0. And he's right. I mean, you got to give credit to Tyreek for that play, because I mean, especially we'll talk about the anti-Tyreek when we get to our awards here in a minute, but that guy tracks the ball in the air better than any player I've ever seen, and
100%.
He does that in addition to being the fastest player in NFL history, and he's crazy. He's amazing. I actually felt good after the game that he got a touchdown. I'm glad that he got to come back to Arrowhead. He scored his touchdown. He gets to have his little moment in the sun before he got his ass jammed back to Cancun. But
he's been pretty gracious. He's been pretty, speaking very highly of all the Chiefs involved, said it was great to go back to Arrowhead.
I mean, he wants to come back. That's what it is.
Exactly. Like you said Snead jammed his ass. Like, you don't make that type of joke if you're like a pissed off rival. Jamar Chase. Exactly. Jamar Chase would never, ever consider saying that out loud. Just like you said, him getting a touchdown is kind of like, if Miami was going to score, I did kind of want it to be him. Like my feelings on him have turned around entirely. I really, don't have any more ill will towards him. The Chiefs have obviously gotten, the better end of the team's success after that trade. And, if he's happy and he's in Miami and he's catching touchdowns and he's almost getting 2,000 yards receiving and whatever, like, you know what? Good luck to him.
Yeah, one quick honorable mention on the S, and speaking of the trade, because he's not going to come up in our next segment according to our show notes, but Trent McDuffie obviously demolished Tyreek in this game in a tackle that will be replayed on Chiefs highlight reels at the stadium and elsewhere for decades to come. I mean, essentially just decleated Tyreek on a play. I don't know
how Tyreek caught that ball.
He slipped in coverage, and that's probably the only reason he didn't jump that for a pick. And probably given where that was on the field, probably a pick 6. Sure. But instead, he comes up with a bone-jarring, game defining tackle, and that was the pick that the Chiefs. Not 1-for-1, because the Chiefs did have to trade up, but that was essentially the first round pick the Chiefs got, trading Tyreek Hill and advantage Trent McDuffie in this game. Let's get into our awards. And for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, we have 3 types of awards. They are inspired by our namesake show, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We have our 5-star men who through their play scream, "I'm a 5-star man." We have our trash men.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
Who, of course, are eating garbage all over the field. And we have our wild cards.
Wild card, bitches! Yeah!
Who are capable of anything. Normally, we would each pick one, but since this was a resounding, dominant, just ass-kicking playoff victory, we will each pick 3 5-star men, and we will each pick 1 trash man and 1 wild card. I will get us started on the 5-star men, and I'm going to take L'Jarius Sneed, the other half of the Chiefs' lockdown, essentially all-pro cornerback duo. And I say essentially all-pro cornerback duo because, of course, L'Jarius Sneed did not make first team or second team all-pro. He didn't make the Pro Bowl. But my God, this man has absolutely erased wide receiver ones all year. And he literally jammed Tyreek into the dirt. He got Tyreek Hill to say, he jammed my ass back to Cancun. You guys all know the play. That's another one that you're going to see on the highlight reels for decades to come. He just jammed Tyreek into the dirt. He murdered him. And Tyreek, you can't do that to Tyreek. He's too fast. He's too quick. He's too physical for his size. And L'Jarius Sneed said, nah, look, I mean, like, you have to really appreciate, like, what he's done. You have to look at, like, the wide receivers that he shut down. They're, like, vastly different players. Like, Tyreek.
Oh, that's a great point.
Shutting down Tyreek is completely different than shutting down A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase, right?
Justin Jefferson, all those guys.
Justin Jefferson. They all have different body types. They have different play styles. Tyreek plays totally differently from those bigger, X receivers. And it didn't matter. L'Jarius Sneed was followed. He was shadowing, and he shut all those guys down. 5-star man in this game, 5-star man on the season. Hell of a year for L'Jarius Sneed.
Hell of a year. He has shown time and time again to be just a monster part of this team's success. And I really, really hope they find their way to be able to maintain him and pay him and keep him happy. Because, I mean, in today's NFL, to be able to have a shutdown corner is just essential. It's essential. It's not even a luxury. It is a necessity to be able to compete at the highest levels. And it's so fun to watch him go out there and just get his nose dirty. And he was mic'd up this week, and all of his just little, like, I do this shit, just like very confident, very swaggy. I just love everything about the kid. And of course, he blitzes. He doesn't do that much anymore. He was known to be the corner blitzer, but of course, Spags can make anybody look like a rock star doing that. But he was like, he got his nose originally dirty by being like a corner blitz specialist, and now he's a lockdown CB1 that's like a Revis Island type of guy. Like, it's just hilarious to see his growth. He's been so awesome. So yes, agreed with you on that 5-star man. I will go with the obvious pick on offense. I think Sneed was the obvious pick on defense. And my first 5-star man of the night is going to be Rashee Rice. I mean, what can you say about the kid from SMU that hasn't already been glowingly said about him? He has blossomed. He's developed into not just like a nice story, not just like a rookie wide receiver that you think might be good someday or could be part of this offense. Like, he is the offense. He is the passing offense. Like, he has taken over the crown from Travis Kelce, which I didn't quite think I would see this soon. I knew I had no idea I'd see this soon. And for him to rip off the long ones, he rips off, crossers that he can take to the house. He rips off like just little, like, his route tree has expanded tremendously from where it was at the beginning of the year. He's reliable. The kid catches like up and away balls, like, not just, you don't have to like put it in his breadbasket. Like, he has a catch radius, which it's been a minute since any Chief other than Travis Kelce has had any catch radius at all. And he certainly has one. And there was a catch, I think it was only like a 8 or 9 yard first down that he had in this game where I didn't really notice it live. And then they like showed the replay and I was like, oh my God, like, that was an incredible catch. Like, he gets up for him and he's tough. He got hit on the sideline on what was probably an ice cold concrete sideline, goes down after a really tough stretch for a first down, and he's down for a little bit. And like, I didn't really realize how much I was relying on him for the Chiefs' success mentally until he got like banged up. And then I'm like, oh my God, the Chiefs are going to lose this game. They're going to lose every game for the rest of our lives. Like, it was bad. And then he was right back in there the very next drive, caught a really big play for that. So like, I'm so impressed with him. And I really, really think if he goes on and the Chiefs make the Super Bowl, let's say, like, at least win 2 more games, everyone's going to be talking about Rashee Rice for a while. Like, this is his breakout type of performance. I think the only way they get there is by riding Rashee Rice in the passing game, and I think he's up for it. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, that catch that you're talking about prompted me to tweet that if every receiver on the team had Rashee Rice's hands, the team would be undefeated or have one loss. And this is the guy that, like, this is the guy that everyone said had terrible hands. Like,
Yes.
if you
Yes.
polled Chiefs fans before the season, they'd be like, Rashee Rice, he's got the most suspect hands on the team.
Right.
I mean, listen, he went through a phase where he was dropping one or
Early
two
in
passes
his
a
NFL
game,
career
and
as a rookie,
incredibly sure-handed. I mean, and like you said, the catch radius. I mean, there are guys on this team that have literally a negative catch radius.
Yes,
like
correct.
Literally,
Yes.
like their
Yes.
catch radius is inside their body, right?
Right.
And we're going to talk about one of them.
Surgically implant the football in order to get them to
We're going
catch
to talk about one of them in a minute. But let's keep the positive vibes going. I'll stay on the defensive side of the ball and pick George Karlaftis. He had not only 1.5 sacks in this game, 3 quarterback hits, 6 combined tackles, 3 solo, 3 assisted, a tackle for loss. Let me just read you what he did in 3 postseason games combined last year as a rookie.
Oh, great.
He had 1 sack. He had 4 combined tackles. He had 2 solo tackles. He had 2 assists. He had 1 tackle for loss, and he had 1 quarterback hit. So in his first playoff game as a second-year player, he bested all of his postseason highs from a year ago when he played in all 3 postseason games. So, I mean, you talk about a guy that made the leap from year 1 to year 2. And, especially for guys that aren't, top 5 picks, your Von Millers, your Joey Bosa's, edge rusher can take a year or 2. And last year it was a lot of effort. And this year he's just added physicality. He's added technique, and he's just a much better player. And I mean, the Chiefs were great on the back end in this game. They've been great on the back end all year. They've gotten great linebacker play for the bulk of the season, but without the strides that Karlaftis has made as a pass rusher on the edge, I mean, this defense is not the elite defense that it is now, and he showed that in this game. He was awesome. 5-star.
Absolutely. I love Furious George a ton. And, we always talk about how, elite edge rushing helps the secondary out. Elite secondary helps the edge rushing out. And when both of them are clicking, you're basically unbeatable. Like, that's really how defense works. Like, if you can get to the quarterback, you really don't need to cover people too well, because you're going to get to him before much has to happen. And then if you can cover people for forever, you really don't need to get to the quarterback, because the quarterback has nowhere to throw to. And when the Chiefs are clicking on defense, it's your first nominee was, L'Jarius Sneed, lockdown corner. Your second one, young edge rusher. Like, that is just a dynamic combo. So completely agree with both of those picks. My second 5-star man is going to be a guy that we have given a lot of love to this year, because he's been one of the best at his position all year long. He has been extremely reliable. A guy that was hurt last year and kind of had some struggles a little bit, but then, boy, once he got his game back, he has not lost it. And that's, of course, Harrison Butker. Harrison Butker has been just automatic. He's been automatic. He had, 1 miss in the horrible Raiders game where everything that could have possibly gone wrong went wrong, which is fine and understandable, because that's fine. We weren't going to need that field goal in that game anyway, obviously. And then outside of that, his other miss, I think, was like the week before.
It was in New England.
It was in New England.
The ball.
Yes, that's right. I knew there was a reason for the other one. Too. It was Deflategate too, and that was a game that the Chiefs also didn't need his kick because they won comfortably. But certainly
perfect
he has
on extra points.
Yes, and perfect on extra points might be a bigger deal than perfect on field goals, given his history with those. He's a guy that, I mean, if there is a game tying or game winning kick to be had in the playoffs, and you're drafting everyone, and all respect to Justin Tucker, who is the GOAT, I'm taking Butker first. I think right now, given he's at like the peak, like Tucker's actually missed some kicks this year and kind of been like, his career's been incredible, but he's
aging.
He's aging. Right. He's declining a little bit. And Butker is ascending. He is not declining. He is becoming the de facto kicker #1 in the NFL. And I'm so happy that the Chiefs plucked him off the Carolina practice squad all those years ago, because, I mean, he's incredible. He's unbelievable.
Do you remember his first playoff field goal attempts?
His first playoff field goal attempt? I don't think I do. Was it in the game we went to?
At the game we went to against Tennessee. He attempted 40-something yarder.
He was on that team in 2017?
That was his rookie year. And he missed that kick. And
they lost by 1.
And they lost by 1. And since then, he has made 25 of 28 field goals in the playoffs.
Jesus.
Right?
He
made
doinked one in
all.
the field in the Philly Super Bowl. I'm just trying to
Yes,
think
he
off the
did.
top of my head if I
Yep,
could
he
remember
missed
the
one. He
playoff
missed one
misses.
there. He missed one in 2020, one in 2021, and one in 2022, which was in the Super Bowl. I don't have
Jeez.
those in front of you,
Yeah,
but
that's fine.
like,
I was curious.
that. I mean, the guy, he's evolved into, like you said, just like one of the great clutch playoff kickers ever, which is
Yes.
crazy. I mean, like
Yes.
to be Adam Vinatieri, to be Steven Gostkowski,
Uh-huh.
whoever, you have to make kicks in the playoffs. And, if you look at Adam Vinatieri's career stats, they're not going to blow you away. That guy's going to
Right.
be in the Hall of Fame
Right.
because
He won Tom Brady 3
he
Super
won
Bowls.
Tom Brady 3 Super Bowls. And to get your kicker in a position where he's winning you Super Bowls, you need to have good teams around him. But you need to have a good kicker to make those kicks, to win
Right.
those Super Bowls, to
Right.
win those playoff games. And I mean, listen, with their struggles in the red zone, on Saturday, if he's not perfect and money, the game still is a comfortable Chiefs win.
It's tighter. It's a lot tighter.
Against a gamer opponent,
Mhm.
it gets really, really tricky and uncomfortable. And so definite 5-star man, great pick by you. I'm gonna end this with a little bit of an unsung hero, maybe on the defensive side of the ball. I'll stay there. A guy that didn't necessarily fill up the stat sheet, but was all over the field. And I could have picked Trent McDuffie. I could have picked Trent or Chris Jones, of course. Like I could have picked Nick Bolton, who had maybe his best game as a Chief. I felt like, I was really concerned about how he was going to look against those speedy linebacker or those speedy running backs in space.
Yeah.
But
He ate him up.
I'm going to go with Charles Omenihu,
Menahu.
Omenahu. Charles Omenahu was a dominant force on the interior of this defense. If you look back at the season, his return really, the Chiefs were good on defense,
Yes.
but the way that they transformed in the middle of the year when Omenahu came back into the dominant force that they were on Saturday had a lot to do with his presence in the middle of the field. And he was great on that really cool safety rotation play where they went from 2 high to 1 high to 2 back to 2 high and resulted in the interception. Former Chief Mitchell Schwartz was like, yeah, that was cool, but like, there was still a guy open on the play. Like if Tua hits him,
yeah.
Well, the reason he's not able to hit him is because Omenahu was in his face.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a guy that had 1 tackle in this game officially, like that's his contribution to the box score. He played as well as you possibly can with that box score stat line. So I'm gonna give him a little shout out because he doesn't necessarily get enough love. He's going to be my last pick for 5-star man. Who you got for your third?
I love it. I do just want to say that I think Omenahu is kind of turning into, for me, the culture edition that,
sure. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Certainly like the 2019 editions. Yes, exactly. Frank Clark and Honey Badger really were, when Omenahu talks, like he is, although he's an extremely pleasant guy and like, he's not like a mean streets type of, like he's not a Frank Clark for sure, but he means business and he talks about winning. And like, he said right after this game, I didn't come here to play in the wild card round. Right. Like, like it's business time now. Like he's just I really, really enjoy what he's brought to the table so far. And he's a dog too. Yeah, that's a great pick. I'm sure the listeners are thinking, all right, you guys have gotten through 5-star men and you haven't talked about the GOAT. You haven't talked about the best player that any of us have ever seen. Why is that? And that's, of course, because we just saved the best for last. My final 5-star man is, of course, going to be Patrick Vaughn Mahomes II. He is perfect and incredible and amazing and all the things that, we literally have 200 hours of you and I talking about how great he is, recorded for posterity. So when we're old men, we can be like, how good was he again? And then we'll listen to our pod and be like, oh yeah, he was
we'll play the Vince McMahon.
We'll play the hits. Yeah. Cut it.
Listen.
Yeah. So, Pat in this game, he's had such a difficult time mentally dealing with the struggles of the offense this year. I think that's clear by just certain emotional reactions that we haven't gotten from him before. And obviously he's pressed a couple times in some games where things haven't been going well and he kind of tries to make something happen like any athlete's going to do. But the ultra competitor in him has never sold this team out in the media. He's never bitched in a way that makes it seem like he is, ungrateful or spoiled or any of that stuff. He's always just ready for the next fight. And, when the team finally gels around him, like they did in this game, he just shows why he's still QB1 in the NFL by a pretty healthy margin. He is accurate. He is, quick with both his decision making and just with I just feel like he played faster. I don't know what it was exactly. Maybe he didn't play faster, but to me, when he's working, when the throws are timed and when things are going the way he wants them to, I just feel like he seems faster than what the defense can handle. And that's not only with his arm, but then he did, of course, the vintage Mahomes breakout with the 2 back-breaking first down runs that he loves to do. And I just feel like, we talked about the health of him in the playoffs and how it's almost never been good in, this is now his 6th postseason. And I think 2 of them, he's been healthy, and the Chiefs won the Super Bowl in one of those in 2019. And really, no, he wasn't healthy in 2019. And in fact, he wasn't healthy in 19 or 22, the 2 years they won the Super Bowl. So we've always kind of lamented man, if we could just get Mahomes through the postseason. And right now he looks sharp. He looks, poised, and I'm just so happy and excited about what he's about to do over these next 3 games.
I have nothing to add. He's the GOAT. Let's talk about Trashman. Let's switch gears a little bit. I'll kick us off. I'm gonna let you take the obvious choice. I'm gonna hit you with a little bit of a curveball here. I'm gonna admit to our listeners that finding a second Trashman for this, which is essentially what my pick was difficult.
Yeah.
And I feel a little bit bad for picking Juwan Taylor, because even though he had a league leading number of penalties this year in the NFL across all positions, not good. And even though he had a penalty in this game that took Rashee Rice's 2nd playoff touchdown in his 1st playoff game off the board, he really kind of got screwed on that call, because really he didn't exactly block anybody in the back. He himself was blocked in the back and then was pushed into a Miami player. And then, of course, he was the one that was called for the penalty. So I was tempted to pick him as a wild card, because he's capable of any penalty, even the ones that aren't his fault, even the ones where he didn't actually commit a penalty.
He is.
But at the end of the day, this is sort of a season long. This is a lifetime achievement award for Juwan Taylor in this game. Miami had no pass rush to speak of, and as a pass blocker, he was good. But I'm giving him the season achievement trash man. I don't think he gets called for that penalty if he's not the most penalized player in the NFL all year. And so while this one wasn't really his fault, it kind of was his fault because of everything he did in the regular season. Now, not all of that was his fault either. It was really Chris Collinsworth's fault. So at the end of the day, Chris Collinsworth is a trash man. Who's your pick?
He is. So mine's easy and obvious, as you said. If anyone watched this game, there was one player on the 53-man roster that just didn't bring it, just didn't contribute. And in fact, he contributed in a negative way. And this player had 3 targets and 1 carry, so 4 plays that were, drawn up for him. And he totaled -1 total yard in those 4 plays, including 2 of the most boneheaded, idiotic, just miscommunication, no look, no try drops on deep balls that I've seen in a really long time. And this is a team that struggles on deep balls and drops them. And I mean, clearly this is a team with MVS. So this is someone, but I'm talking about McCole Hardman. I'm talking about
sure, of course.
His effort on Saturday was poor. He wasn't sharp. He wasn't fast on a couple of he had an end around that went for -4 yards on 3rd and 1. And it was so obvious from the moment he touched that ball that it was not only not going anywhere, but that I just wanted him to go down so he didn't fumble the ball, because he was going sideways and the Miami linebackers were going faster than him sideways. They were stringing him out so easily. So then he tried to go backwards to loop it around. But Jet, you're not fast anymore, buddy. You're just not. And then that's the run. That's the 1 4-yard loss on the run on a big 3rd down. Now, fortunately, the Chiefs on 4th and 5 picked it up. So it didn't end up killing them. But the two long ones were just infuriating.
Yeah, they were bad. They were awful. Like we just discussed,
drive killers.
Negative catch radius for this
Negative
guy.
catch radius. They were both 3rd down plays that the Chiefs and Mahomes, saw McColl. Now, to his credit, he beat his man on both plays. I mean, he was on the first one, he went by the coverage, and then when Mahomes threw it up, he's just the worst tracker of the ball of all time of any player in any sport I've ever seen. I mean,
he's the anti-Tyreek.
He's the anti-Tyreek in every way.
spectrum.
I can't believe they both were ever on the same practice field. Like, can you imagine running drills and you throw 1-9 route to Tyreek and you maybe, push it or underthrow it or whatever, and he just adjusts totally fine and makes the catch and walks in the end zone. And then you throw into McColl and he doesn't even know you threw it. Like, it's just
sure.
It's infuriating. And then the most egregious play of the night for McColl was most definitely when he got absolutely held, absolutely DPI'd on a deep ball. Mahomes sees it. He puts the ball up, almost assuredly going to get a penalty on that. But the reaction by McColl, which was to completely give up on the pass and to throw his hands up and look at the ref as the play is still developing, and as that ball hits, a second or two after McColl is holding his arms up and looking at the ref, just really, really is not the attitude or the effort level that you need from a team that's trying to go win a Super Bowl. It's just not. And if he was a new culture addition this year or something, I would maybe write it off as like, yeah, he hasn't quite figured out the way the Chiefs do stuff, but like, he's one of the oldest tenured Chiefs on the roster. And I don't know if he picked that up from Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if this insane diva mentality that he had on this play was something that just seeped into his mind from Aaron Rodgers. But I do think that it was bullshit, and I think that it's deserving of a trash man, and I was really, really mad.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it was an egregious no call by the officials, but
it was.
You do have to sell it, and people get upset and infuriated, at Pat asking for calls, but they're legitimate penalties. The thing is, you can't give up on the play, because if you give up on the play, that gives the refs an opportunity to not call it. I mean, like, if you're pushing through contact and you're really fighting through it, as opposed to just giving up, there's an argument, like, the refs, of course, have no accountability. We've implemented this fact
negative
over and over and over and over again on this podcast. But if the refs were asked about that play after the game, I'm not sure. They do have like a 2-minute press conference. I didn't see anything about it, but
they don't do a presser. They have one pool reporter that prints a statement out.
Sure, right.
There's no camera. There's no recording of anything. It's horseshit.
I don't know if this was addressed, but I mean, if I were that referee, I'd say, look, ball wasn't catchable. It's not DPI, right? Like, and the reason it's not catchable to the eye of the official is because McColl just gives up on the play and he doesn't fight through contact. If he fights, if he even attempts to fight through that and he gets a little bit closer and he gets his arms out, which of course, again, tall order because negative catch radius, his arms disappear when the ball is in the air. It's like just a weird sort of fluke of physics that his body parts literally like shrink into his body.
It was cold out,
in the air. Yeah, sure. The shrinkage. I get it. But you got to fight through it. You got to be able to at least sell it to be able to get the call. So in some ways, that's on him. Why don't you do the first wild card? Because I've got one to close this out here.
Sure. This was a guy that I found myself surprised at the handful of plays where I was like, damn, good effort. Good. This is like the opposite of the McCole Hardman Award, because despite this guy's general lack of athletic ability of any kind, and despite his numerous weeks on this show being named the trash man, to the point where we had the honorary Clyde Edwards-Helaire trash man award, he busted his ass in this game, but he's a wild card because he's also shitty and he also fumbled the ball late in the game. So like, he's not going to ever be, he'll never do a 5-star man performance again. But just there was a third down where it was 3rd and 4 and he fought for 5. He was contacted around 3 and pushed through it and squirmed his way in there. And then
he pushed the pile.
And then he pushed it. And then another play, he completely pushed the pile. He got his little legs churning, and he did look like Pacheco. And in fact, I thought I made a mistake at identifying who the running back was before that play. And then he comes out of there and I was like, oh, I guess Clyde is capable every now and then. And wild card, of course, is being capable of anything. And boy, That guy, I mean, I don't think he's probably along for the Chiefs anymore. I'm sure this is the last run he's got in him, but what a run it's been. It's been very weird, and he's my wild card.
I mean, to your point, you just mentioned two pretty good, solid plays. He finished with 7 carries for 21 yards, and that was with a long of 12.
Yeah.
And, he fought and got extra yardage, but at the end of the day, his performance was still not very good. So that's a great wild card pick by you. I'm going to go with, probably the only name that will go down in the annals of Chiefs history that we haven't mentioned yet on this podcast. And that, of course, is Travis Kelce. I thought Travis was deserving of a wild card in this game because on the whole, he looked good. I mean, he gave up a chance at an extending his own record for an 8th consecutive tight end 1,000-yard receiving season to get his body right. And he looked healthy. He looked healthier than he's looked in a long time. He's had some big games this year, but not in several months. And he looked spry, and he got open a lot in this game. But the wild card aspect of this is, of course, he had 3 drops, and he's going to be critical on himself. He's going to get that fixed, but he has had some drop issues this year, and that doesn't have anything to do with how his body's feeling. That's just a mental thing. Now, it may have had something to do with the fact that it was essentially 30 below, and I'm sure the ball felt like a concrete block trying to catch it. And
can't imagine.
One of those balls was up pretty high. He had to go up for it, but a couple of them hit him in the hands, down low. He's got to come in with those. But I would say overall, I was encouraged by this, but it was a little bit of a wild card performance by Travis.
Well, it's the playoffs, which means it's time to catch up with the Ringers, Rany Jazayerli, who has been kind enough to join us on the show for each of the last 2 playoff runs by the Chiefs. Rany, before we dive into the details, exactly what happened to Arrowhead on Sunday, what is your temperature check? How are you feeling about the Chiefs in general, having defeated the Miami Dolphins on Saturday?
Well, my temperature's a lot warmer than Arrowhead was on Saturday night. Let me tell you that. I think it's important to take a step back and remember that the Chiefs won a playoff game this weekend, and we take that for granted now. And it wasn't a particularly competitive game, and we'll talk about all of that. But my God, they won a playoff game, which means 6 years in a row, 6 years of Patrick Mahomes, they have never had a losing record in any postseason under Patrick Mahomes.
Crazy.
They've only had 1 year in which they didn't have a winning record. That being the first year when they went 1-1. They've won at least 2 playoff games in each of the last 4 seasons now, and they've got a chance to make it 5 in a row, which I believe might be unprecedented in NFL history.
Sure.
And certainly when you think about the history of the Chiefs, how many one and dones they've had, even if they lose this weekend, and I'm optimistic they will not, but even if they do, they won a playoff game this season. And that's just something as a Chiefs fan that will never, ever get old. And I hope I will never, ever take for granted. So I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Rany, you tweeted the other day, 5 years ago before Mahomes' first playoff game, the Chiefs' franchise record in the postseason was 9-18, and they're back to 500 at 21-21, which is absurd. I mean, that's absolutely crazy.
Well, think about it. I mean, half a century of being like one of the most cursed franchises in the sport. Was it you who ranked? Where did they rank? Like 28th or 29th on winning percentage?
That's correct. They were 28th from 66 to 2017 in franchise playoff win percentage. They are up to 12th. They went from 28th to 12th in 6 years.
Which is it's interesting that 500 is actually a 12th, which would be
that's right,
above the median. But that also, the nature of the playoffs is that teams that have had dynasties will tend to be well over 500, and then everyone else is a little bit under 500.
Right.
But that just gives you an idea. We're like above the median in terms of the 32 teams after being one of the 4 or 5 worst for half a century. That's what 5 years of Patrick Mahomes has balanced the scales from more than 50 years of Chiefs futility. It's a remarkable run, and we talked about this last week, but this we'll see how far they go this year. But every win this year is just a little bit more special because this all season, this was certainly the entire second half of the season, this was the year that the rest of the league thought that the Chiefs will get their comeuppance, and even if they lose this week, they won a playoff game. They've moved farther than all, but we're down to the final 8. So 24 teams would be very happy to be in the position the Chiefs are in right now.
Rany, this is a great place to start. We'll circle back to where Mahomes and the Chiefs sort of stand in the grand scheme of things. But getting into this Dolphins game, when we had you on last week and we're kind of previewing this game, one of the questions that we sort of were pondering was, does this team have the capability of flipping the switch? Does it have another gear that didn't reach in the regular season and maybe didn't need to reach in the regular season? And football it's obviously different from your main sport that you podcast about, baseball. Like I don't think of baseball as being we can just, turn it on. We play 162 games and then, the playoffs. Certainly there are teams that go on their sort of weird postseason runs, but it's just not the nature of a single elimination tournament and all the strategy and game planning and everything that goes into winning an NFL football game. There definitely are teams that are capable of flipping the switch. And our question that we were discussing last week really was, do the Chiefs have that in them? I don't know about you, but flip switch.
I mean, if I thought it was as easy as flipping a switch, I really wish the Chiefs had flipped that switch a little earlier in the season.
Sure,
We might have gotten a 2 or a 1 seed.
No kidding.
So I don't know if it's so much as flipping a switch as simply sifting through all of the, all of the weak spots, all of the deficiencies in this team, and through the process of trial and error, arriving at, if not the right answer, as close to the right answer as possible after 17 games. And I think that is something that the Chiefs have shown an ability to do over the last couple of years, particularly on defense, I would say, but also on offense. And that was my hope. It wasn't so much that, they're sleepwalking through the regular season. They're going to flip the switch. They're going to turn it on in the playoffs. I wasn't, that wasn't where my optimism lay last week. It was more in the sense that they were like what's the word, asymptotically approaching the solution all season long. And they were so close to figuring things out that just 1 or 2 more tweaks and they might be peaking at just the right time. And we saw signs of that late in the year with just simplifying the offense and getting Rashee Rice even more involved in the offense, and eliminating targets to Sky Moore and MVS. And so what I think we saw in the Dolphins game was continuing to asymptotically approach the best case scenario offense given the talent on hand. Right. I mean, obviously Sky Moore's not out there. MVS, I think, had 2 targets. And Rashee Rice had 8 receptions for 130 yards, maybe his best game as a pro in his first game of the playoffs. Most receiving yards by a Chiefs rookie in postseason history. These are all good things. Travis Kelce looked better with the week off. He had some drops because it was 4 below 0. I think I'll if there's ever a game in which I'll give somebody a pass for drops, it was this one, and if there's ever a player I'd give a pass to, it's Travis Kelce. So I think the offense that we saw, and then just heavily relying on Isaiah Pacheco, go in and focusing the rushing game up the middle. It was just that's the strategy, right? And then playing turnover-free ball. I mean, they had the very late turnover in garbage time with Clyde, but I mean, the game was done at that point. And especially given the frigid conditions, just holding on to the ball, that was something I was really worried about the whole game.
Right.
They played as close to mistake-free ball as I think this team's capable of, not just in terms of physical mistakes on the field, but also just the mistakes of planning on the coaching side of where the ball's going to. This was pretty much mistake-free offense. And, they scored 26 points. And, if it were not for some questionable block in the back call on Jawan Taylor, if it wasn't for the elements, I mean, they could have easily scored a lot more. I mean, they scored on 6 red zone possessions. And, if they do that, if they have 6 red zone possessions with this defense, they're going to probably win any game they play the rest of the season. So
Yeah, I'll take the red zone trips and take my chances that the Chiefs are going to figure out a way to punch it in. Just give me the ball down there as much as possible. You mentioned Rashee Rice's 130 yards. I just thought this was funny. He ended Saturday with the fourth most rookie receiving yards by a wide receiver in postseason history. He is now fifth because Puka Nacua set the record on Sunday with 181 yards by a rookie.
Jeez.
But Rashee is fifth, and Jeremy Maclin is third, another Andy Reid rookie wide receiver in the playoffs. So, all the talk about rookie wide receivers not being able to cut it in the Reid system, they sure figure it out by the end of the year. I want to talk, since we're talking about wide receivers, about the wide receiver that made his return to Arrowhead, of course, the Cheetah. He had one good broken play, and other than that, got his ass totally jammed back to Cancun, as he tweeted today, by both Snead and McDuffie, but especially L'Jarius Sneed. Just real quick, what did it feel like to you to see Tyreek Hill in a big game at Arrowhead going against the Chiefs and not really able to do much all night?
I mean, obviously it was terrifying having him there, but the combination of the elements, the combination of Tua Tagovailoa throwing the ball to him instead of Patrick Mahomes, and having L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie. I wasn't, I knew he was going to get his yards, his catch, and he had the one play which was vintage Tyreek. I mean, it's easy to forget that was a bad throw from Tua.
Yes.
Like, it was underthrown, which is why it was pass interference in the first place. And I think what happened there is that McDuffie, knew in the moment that he had committed interference, and there's always that, just that natural psychological reaction when you're, when you've been caught in the act, to immediately pull your hands back and make a big show of I didn't do anything, and then when he actually caught it kind of put him in a bad position to actually defend the play. He did try to make a tackle. Right. Tyreek was, made a really good move to get out of it. Again, it's really cold, so probably that hurt with the tackle. Would have been better if he just made the tackle or taken the pass interference, because it was still at the 15-yard line. So he let him slip away. But it's a human reaction to knowing that you interfered. And again, the reason for the interference is that Tua vastly underthrew his receiver. So it was a fluke. I mean, it was essentially a fluke and a great play by a great player. But other than that, he had what?
4 for 9.
Yeah.
4 catches for 9 yards outside that one play.
9 yards, because I think 1 or 2 of those were for negative plays. I mean, they were fantastic. And it's so weird because early in the season the talk was how Trent McDuffie was really taking that leap forward and going from very promising rookie to this guy's one of the best quarterbacks in the sport. And then sometime in December, we realized he's not even the best cornerback on the team. Like, L'Jarius, in his fourth season with the club, had descended to a completely another level. And it's just fascinating because they have different styles, right? Like, L'Jarius is so much more physical at the line, so much, maybe the best cornerback in the sport in terms of just jamming receivers, preventing them from getting out of their blocks. Obviously, there was the play, the vintage play that got a lot of attention of you just having. I mean, the conditions were slippery, and I think Tyreek, didn't have good footing on the ice and was just jammed right into the ground, and I guess went through the ground straight to Cancun. But that's the play everyone will remember. But that's L'Jarius at his best. But there was, perhaps even more importantly, there was the 4th and 2 play, which I don't know where they were, but both McDuffie and L'Jarius were lined up next to each other, and it was a pick play, and McDuffie was originally picked, but recovered in time. There was a moment there, because Tyreek also tweeted about this play, and it looked like he was throwing some shade at his quarterback for basically saying, the two of the best cornerbacks in the league, and I still got open, because there was a brief moment in time where he was open, but by the time Tua saw him and threw him the ball, McDuffie had recovered and batted it away, and it was a 4th and 2 play. So I mean, it was a turnover essentially. So they played elite. When you look at what happened in throughout the sport over the weekend, and the Cowboys with their vaunted defense giving up 48 to the Packers, and the Browns. I mean, people are like, if you were to rank defenses across the sport, the Chiefs, I think we're second in the league in points allowed, but I don't know if the consensus was that they were the second best defense in the sport. There were a lot of people putting the
Agreed.
Browns ahead of them,
Right.
and a few were putting the Cowboys ahead of them. The Browns gave up 45 to the Texans. So to see on a playoff stage, and again, we saw these guys in the playoffs last year. This is the benefit we have. We're spoiled as we have playoff experience. We not just the players, but us as fans. We know what this defense was capable of last year with rookies. How much better it got as the season went along into the postseason. But to see them come up on a stage like that, and yeah, the conditions were brutal. But I mean, they gave up one fluke bomb to the fastest guy in the sport and nothing else. Yeah, it has to make you feel very good that the game plan, the basically the strategy for winning a Super Bowl this year, the thesis is very much intact. Manage the game on offense, play mistake-free football on offense, and then just suffocate on defense. It worked to perfection in their first game.
To your point, Randy, the Chiefs are the only team to not allow 30 or more points in a game this year, and they actually have been even better than that because their season high was 27 against the Green Bay Packers, who just dropped almost a 50-burger on Dallas in Dallas, a team that obviously, as you just mentioned, was certainly one of the top 3 or 4 defenses in the NFL this year. The only other team to score more than 21 on them was the Broncos, who got 24 in that ridiculous fluky game where they got 5 turnovers on the Chiefs and only scored 24 points. And other than that, nobody scored more than 21 on them. And you kind of already mentioned it. I mean, Cleveland, which by I think EPA and success rate metrics was literally one of the greatest defenses ever, like certainly of the last, of this millennium. We saw them get completely demolished by the Texans. We saw Dallas get demolished. So it's really crazy to think about not only how good this Chiefs defense has been, but how consistent they've been. And obviously these were ideal conditions for defense, but the Chiefs were able to move the ball on offense. We'll circle back to that and talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But I mean, at this point, you almost have to expect that they'll be able to continue doing this, even when they go up against maybe a little bit more suited for cold weather offenses in Buffalo. And then if they win next week, maybe in Baltimore.
Yeah. And the other thing is that it also is an indication that, playoff spags is real, right?
Exactly.
That the real MVP of this season, Steve Spagnuolo, not only does his shit works in the playoffs. And he's proved it before. Obviously, he proved it the greatest my shit works in the playoffs on defense performance of all time against the 2007 Patriots. So this is not a new thing with him. But it is something I think people forget about, is that I don't say nobody, but very few defensive coordinators game plan for a specific game, especially when they have some time to do so, better than Steve Spagnuolo. Which the 2 extra days here the Chiefs have to prepare for this Bills game.
Right.
That's no joke. And I think it matters almost more on the defensive side than on the offensive side. But also, this season, this defense is his magnum opus, certainly since he joined the Chiefs, because he finally has the talent that he needs to really excel. He's made it work with mediocre defenses despite not having the bulk of the draft capital on his side. And then last year when they just loaded up on McDuffie and Karl Loftus and Brian Cook and Leo Chenal, and Joshua Williams and
Watson.
and Jalen Watson. They somewhere around the midpoint of the 2022 season, this defense went from, acceptably mediocre to, the shining strength of the team. But what is so fascinating about this defense, I think, is that it's a very cerebral, not just a cerebral defense, a cerebral defensive game plan. And I've seen defensive coordinators who are too smart for their own good, and try and create defensive game plans that are so complex that their own players don't understand it and don't understand where they're supposed to be. and don't know how to set up and don't know how to adjust. I mean, I look back. I mean, Bob Sutton had a little bit of this.
Yes.
The best example, of course, is still the notorious Greg Robinson on the Stanford Field Chiefs, who, I mean, for even after he was hounded out of the NFL and he went to my alma mater, University of Michigan, and screwed up their defenses as defensive coordinator. And to the end, it was like, oh, the system works if the players just execute it. But the problem is nobody could execute it because it's too damn complicated. Or just it didn't make sense. The players could not buy in, or the players could not figure out exactly where they were supposed to be. And I remember that the playoff game against the Colts, where Peyton Manning was basically calling out exactly where they were doing before they were doing it, at the line, and the Colts never punted, and the defense might as well not have been on the field. So there's always a danger when you have a plan where you've got so many moving parts. And when you think about this defense, where they could be blitzing from any side. They could be dropping linemen into coverage while blitzing, linebackers or even defensive backs. You had the great view of this game of the interception, where they set up in 2-eye, rotated to 1-high right before the snap, and it was they basically safeties made a circle before.
Switched back to 2-high right at the snap.
They did a 180 before the snap, and then 180 back to 2-high at the snap. And the guy who rotated back into 2-high was Mike Edwards, and was there to make the interception when two overthrew his receiver. So that it's not simple. It is complicated, but and I have to assume this is mostly by design. But they picked players. They've drafted guys who get it, who have the intellectual capability of understanding what they're supposed to be doing, where they're supposed to be. And even with these guys, it took a long time for them to figure it out, because I remember last year, I heard, in the Super Bowl celebration in the clubhouse, some of the defensive players, the rookies, were kind of like laughing about how they just won a Super Bowl. They just won the Super Bowl as rookies, and they still didn't understand the defense. Somebody said to the point where it's like, wait till next year when we actually understand what we're doing.
Turns out they
understand what they're doing now.
Right.
All of them do. And it's so that part of it is where they have a defensive coordinator who comes up with these brilliant but very intricate defensive plans. And I'm not claiming I understand them myself. I did not, I've never coached football, and I'm kind of learning as we go. I'm learning from this organization, but it's clear they're very intricate defensive plans, and he has the personnel to make it work. That is what is really, exciting about this defense. And, he has some more tricks up his sleeve, and, we'll see if the quarterbacks that he goes up against the rest of the way, because we're looking at Josh Allen. We're probably looking at Lamar Jackson, maybe Brock.
Or CJ Stroud, like either one.
Or CJ, right? Well, right. The thing about I just Lamar. Maybe it's I'm putting too much emphasis on his playoff history, which is short but checkered.
Good.
Or just maybe the type of quarterback that he is. He's certainly a lot better this year, and we have not seen him this year, so it's possible he's figured a lot of this out, but. I do feel optimistic about that. But let's obviously get through Josh Allen first. Josh is really the one guy where, he's smart enough to figure this stuff out. But we've played the Bills very tight, over the years. Even this year when we lost, it was a 20-17 game where we, like so many other games, we beat ourselves. So I'm feeling very good about where this defense is. If they can get to 21, or at least, or certainly 24 points on offense, we should be in this game very easily.
Let's turn over to the other side of the ball here, Rany. And obviously, this game was very cold. It was officially the fourth coldest game in NFL history. If you watched the Dolphins offense, it looked like they were playing in the fourth coldest game in NFL history, other than obviously the duck that Tyreek was able to track beautifully and turn into a touchdown. Wish we had somebody like him on our side of the ball. That was always a fun experience. They never entered the red zone. The Chiefs, on the other hand, scored on 6 of their first 8 drives, had a couple of drops in there on the 2 drives that they didn't score out of those first 8, both essentially ended with drops or missed tracks by McCole Hardman. They racked up over 400 yards of total offense. if you look at the three colder games in NFL history, the 1967 Ice Bowl, the 1981 AFC Championship, and the 2016 Vikings-Seahawks playoff game where Blair Walsh missed the 27-yarder to lose the game for the Vikings, the leading passers in those games threw for 191, 175, and 146 yards, respectively. Now, granted, some of those different eras, but Patrick Mahomes in this game went for 262 yards, and it felt like if McCole Hardman tracks down a couple of those balls and Travis Kelce holds on to, one of the three drops that he has, he could have passed for 350, 400 yards in this game easily if he'd gotten a little bit more help from his receivers. So I have to ask, at this point, is Patrick Mahomes the undisputed greatest cold weather, bad weather quarterback of all time?
I mean, I would say you could just take out the words cold weather and bad weather there and leave it at that, but I don't want to start that quite yet. I think you can make the case for it, right? I mean, like I think we talked about it last week as the temperature forecast just kept dropping and dropping. It's like, if this game is 15 or 20 degrees, Tua's not going to be able to throw, and we're going to be in great shape. But if it's below zero, I don't know if Patrick can throw, right? That was my concern. And so I would say the first couple throws of the game were he was throwing things, he was sailing things high.
Yep.
And I think it's just a matter of gripping the ball, right? But I'll tell you, if you watch that game with no knowledge of what the temperature was,
exactly,
yeah,
and nobody discussed it, I would. And you asked me at the end, how cold do you think it was there? I would have said probably 15 or 20 degrees. I would have thought it was a cold game like the Titans AFC Championship. But I mean, credit to the crowd for being pretty loud. Like maybe it wasn't 100% full, but it was close to it. They were making tons of noise. And dude, 4 below zero, like, I went outside today, and it's about that temperature here in Chicago, and I'm fine for about 4 minutes, but I have no idea how you sit out there for 4 hours. So all of you people who went out there, shout out to you, because like it actually, I mean, I thought it'd be a miserable game to go to, and now I'm kind of jealous. I mean, it looked like people were having a good time.
Yeah,
they were swag surfing and partying, and it was you would never have guessed from the crowd it was the fourth coldest game in NFL history.
It's crazy what a win does there, right? Just like the difference between winning that game and losing it for the
sure.
The vibes.
Well, I mean, I remember how cold the Lynn Elliott game was, and how miserable that is. I mean, that was maybe the coldest playoff game the Chiefs had before this one, but very different experience. Also, shout out to Harrison Butker, who none of the kicks were longer than the 33 yard extra pointer, but like only one or two of those were even in doubt on 6 kicks. And we have a kicker who doesn't make excuses for cold weather, no matter how cold.
Exactly right. And you know what? This was a much colder game than in 1995.
It was like 15 or 20 degrees colder, which is
officially it was officially 16 degrees colder than it was at kickoff in the 1995 playoffs.
Yeah. And you would never have known from watching them. You would never have known. I mean, some of the kickoffs, more on the other side, I would say.
Yes.
Some of the kickoffs, it was to the point. I'm not sure. It wasn't clear if it was on purpose, if it was a reaction to being worried about slipping. I think on the kickoff, not so much about how far, because he had a couple touchbacks. I mean, he had some distance, but I do wonder if it was just more the grip of the cleats, and worried that if you might accidentally pop one up and kick it like 10 yards. But again, it's like for most of the game, the way the Chiefs were playing, it didn't look like an all-time cold game. And like you said, Mahomes, first quarterback ever to throw for 200 yards in a game that was below zero, and cleared that with room to spare. We have to ask what McCole Hardman was doing. I mean,
yes,
it's one thing. Okay, the first deep ball, I look like he just kind of lost it in the lights, maybe, or I was trying to make excuses for
those arrowhead
lights that Tyreek was talking about. That I mean, Arrowhead does have the biggest drop rate of any stadium at night. I mean, that's a thing. But
I'll say that the second one, I'm not sure he realized in the moment he was playing a football game.
Yeah,
he looked like he was just just going for a jog or on a track in a track meet. Like it didn't seem to occur to him that a ball might be thrown in his direction. So that that was, I believe, where they did call Was that the one they called the penalty
No,
on?
they
No,
they
that was
didn't.
different.
It
That
was a
the other
very
one,
clear
the third one.
DPI. He had him
Correct.
by the, behind the jersey, and McCole, instead of playing the play out, and
Right.
as
And
you
maybe
said, the
that's what it
ball was
was. Maybe
thrown
he's
to
just
him.
like, well, like they touched me, therefore
Yeah.
I cannot be held accountable for not trying to catch a
Right.
ball.
Right.
It's, the man has 2 Super Bowl rings with the Kansas City Chiefs, and
He
and
does.
I'm glad that they brought him back because we need somebody who could at least be a deep threat. Anybody, and maybe he can be that guy, and if not, then at least he can run some jet sweeps, I suppose. But again,
He
like you
tried
said,
one of those on Saturday, and it went for -4. So I don't
yeah,
know. I don't
this
know
is
if he can
true.
do that.
Maybe he can't do that either. He's at least done it in the past, but no,
Mhm.
but with all that, Patrick Mahomes threw for 262 yards and no interceptions, um, and also two rushing attempts for 41 yards. So
Oh God,
the
he's just the best.
rushing Patrick is still the most underrated commodity in the sport.
He is. Let's talk about one reason that he was able to throw for all those yards, which was not McCole Hardman or any of the guys that have failed them throughout the year, but it's a
Marquez
big
Valdez
three.
Scantling,
It's
Kadarius
yeah,
Toney.
exactly right. Sky Moore. I mean, any of those guys. It's instead Kelsey and Rice. Now, Pacheco obviously contributed a ton. I called it the big three because on the ground he's been amazing. But Kelsey and Rice were great this game. And despite Kelsey's 3 drops, like you said, elements and all those things considered, the first 10 plays on offense were just to these 3 players. It was all plays to either Pacheco runs or Rice and Kelsey targets. And the trio finished the night a combined 289 yards from scrimmage of the team's 409. So, 120 for the rest of the other guys. And both their touchdowns, of course, Pacheco rushing touchdown and the Rice crosser. I think the team has found the identity on offense, at least as far as, they've been trying to tell us all year. We're looking for what works. We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure it out. And then things have kind of clicked a couple weeks ago. Certainly the Bengals game, everyone could point to as one of the first recent games where it felt like the offense kind of figured stuff out. And a lot of that was because they featured Pacheco and Kelsey and Rice. That's the formula moving forward, right? Like, do those 3 have to be 75% of your offense?
Yeah, no, that's very simple. They simplified things to Rice, Kelsey, Pacheco. Both, they didn't use Pacheco much as a receiver in this game, but they certainly can, and they probably will. And then what they seem to be doing, and what I think they absolutely should do, is then you then mix in the occasional design play for Noah Gray. He had 1 catch in this game for 20 yards. Nice play.
Really great catch by him.
And then you have the one, if you can complete 1 deep pass to Justin Watson, that just keeps the defense honest, keeps them from completely moving up to the line. He had 2 catches for 20 yards in this game. And then, everything else you get is a bonus. It's not saying you never throw to the other guys, but you don't rely on MVS, Richie James, McCole Hardman. I'm trying to think. I guess Justin Ross,
pretty much,
maybe.
Yeah, right. That's really
I don't
it.
even know. But yeah, essentially, yeah. The big 3 are 75 to 80% of your targets. Maybe you mix in Clyde in there, but even Clyde, it's the gravy on top.
Yes.
But Gray and Watson are the 2 guys that I do think are going to be involved, even if it's just for like 2 targets a game. But they can make a big difference. And then you just avoid the dumb mistakes, avoid the dumb plays. They had the direct snap to Pacheco, but it wasn't a handoff play, which led to the fumble against the Raiders.
Right.
And
he faked the handoff, but I liked him faking that handoff
right.
and spinning around. That was nice.
No, that worked well. And I in that situation where a pitch back to Mahomes is almost safer than like the handoff, I feel like.
Yeah.
And you can tell they're setting something up there.
Yeah.
Like we get to the Super Bowl, if we get there, there's something in there where the ball, the Pacheco's not keeping the ball and it's going to Patrick, and they're going to be doing some razzle dazzle. But like, Blake Bell wasn't targeted, which was probably a good thing. Like,
yes,
just simplify things. But really, 80% of the targets to Pacheco, Rice, and Kelsey, and that's really all. That's all it is. It's not maybe a formula for getting 42 points,
right?
But that's the whole point. You get to 24 to 27 points. They got 26, and they were never challenged in this game. Like that's all they need to do.
A safe, effective 26-27 is all this team needs. They don't need to go throw for the 80-yard bomb every play because, first of all, they're not capable of it, honestly. And second of all, they don't need to. So before we go to the Bills, which is obviously the upcoming opponent, we'll wrap it up with a little Mahomes bit. He breaks a all-time tie with Troy Aikman, Aaron Rodgers, and Roger Staubach in playoff victories as a starting quarterback with his 12th. He is currently the only player in NFL history with exactly 12. So he's 8th by himself. Just an unbelievable start here in these only 6 seasons, passing Aaron Rodgers, who's been, arguably outside of Tom Brady, the most prolific and successful quarterback of this generation. And, they're Patrick sitting there with 12. Just, what are your thoughts on what he's doing in the postseason so far? His effectiveness, his resume so far through 6 seasons. Pretty inarguable. I know Tom Brady won his first 10 games. Everyone always goes back to that, but he wasn't really the reason that trio of Super Bowls happened early on. That was very clearly defense and fourth quarter drives. But what do you think about Patrick so far with his 12th win?
Well, it's interesting you say that about Tom Brady, because if anything, the Chiefs are sort of adaptive. They're maintaining their dynastic aspirations, much like the Patriots did. You have to adapt or die, right? You cannot. You have to adapt to the talent on hand. You have to constantly replenish the talent. And like the Patriots, did this for 19 years, which is just, to say it's unprecedented is to insult it. I mean, it's like twice as long as basically any other dynastic run in NFL history.
Yeah.
But the Chiefs are, if you start this with the start of the Patrick Mahomes era in this is year 6, and they're making those adjustments. But what's fascinating to me is that the Patriots started with Tom Brady being a game manager and an elite defense, and then evolved so that by 2007 they were this fire-breathing offense that just bludgeoned people with points. The Chiefs started in that mode.
Yeah, they did.
And here we are in year 6, and they're asking Patrick Mahomes to basically be a game manager. In this case, unlike Tom Brady in his first year as a starter, a laughably overqualified game manager. The point is, he's in that role, but he has Patrick Mahomes in his pocket, right? That's the event. But it's essentially he only needs to be a game manager because you have this elite defense. But the difference, between Patrick Mahomes game manager and Alex Smith game manager is that that it's there if you need it.
Yeah.
That if you need a game-winning drive in the fourth quarter, God love Alex Smith, but that's the one thing. As much as I loved everything he did for this organization. At least twice. The Titans lost, the Steelers lost, actually, and the Colts lost three times.
Yeah. 3
playoff games. 2 of them, the Chiefs blew a huge lead. The Steelers game was tight kind of the whole way through. And in the Steelers one, maybe I won't fault them too much for that, because the 2-point conversion, there was a stupid holding call. But certainly the other 2 games.
Carl.
Yeah, exactly. Where they blew, but the other 2 games, they blew a huge lead, but they had the ball down by 1 point. So a field goal wins the game, and he wasn't able to do it. You've got that Patrick Mahomes magic in the pocket if you need it.
Right.
But essentially they've reversed what Tom Brady and the course. But I think this is what is necessary for this organization to do if they want to keep this going for another 5, 10, 12, 15 years, for as long as Patrick Mahomes wants to play. So that part of it is really exciting, because the Patriots have set this benchmark, and in a way I'm glad they did, because they've demonstrated the limits of what is possible. Which before them you would not even think that a team could extend a dynasty for or this kind of run of success for more than about 6-7 years. That was basically the limit. And now no, it is possible. You can actually win your division, 14 years in a row, whatever the hell the Patriots did, 15 out of 16. You keep Bernard Pollard the hell away from Patrick Mahomes, but other than that, this could go indefinitely. But in terms of just his legacy, like we're talking about, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, Roger Staubach, Troy Aikman. Joe Montana is at 16 playoff victories. That's the second most all time. Like, there's a reason why we've already just the argument is whether or not Mahomes will challenge Brady for number 1, but Number two is he is not there yet, but like it's not even remotely a stretch to say he will be one of the two best quarterbacks of all time. But in terms of playoff victories, there's a plausible path for him to get there next year.
Yeah,
like he's only 4 behind Joe Montana. If he has an extended run this season, if we get to the Super Bowl, he's in line to at least tie, if not break that record, by getting to the Super Bowl again next year, before his 30th birthday. That's absurd. It's so crazy. Absurd. But here's actually my favorite little Mahomes nugget that I was thinking about recently. You guys want to have I think an underrated reason why the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes are maybe hated is too strong a word, but just kind of the rest of football's kind of sick of them.
Please tell us, Rany.
Do you realize how many teams have been eliminated by Patrick Mahomes? Let me take you through this. The entire AFC South.
Yep.
The Jaguars, the Texans, the Titans, and the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
All 4 have lost a playoff. Your season is end. We're not just talking about, lost a big game. You lost a playoff game. The worst fate imaginable. They've lost to Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
Yep.
The AFC North, the Steelers.
Yep.
The Bengals.
The Browns.
We've got a chance to finish off a second division if we face the Ravens in a week, right? In a week and a half.
Right.
That's almost 2 full divisions.
Unbelievable.
The Dolphins now, we just added the Dolphins and the Bills.
Yep.
Sure. 2 out of 4.
That's 2 out of 4.
The Jets haven't given us an opportunity.
The Jets and the Patriots are the only team that he's actually had a chance to, and that one sticks in my craw, obviously. But
obviously,
the Jets and the Patriots are the only ones left. And then the AFC West,
the whole division.
They haven't faced any of them in the playoffs because he's eliminated them from ever winning the division. The entire AFC, with the exception of the Jets and the Patriots, and then the Ravens are on hold right now. But there's a chance in 10 days, there'll be 2 teams out of 15 that have not personally suffered, a season-ending fate at the hands of Patrick Mahomes in 6 seasons. That's
crazy.
Insane.
That's crazy.
It's insane. Like, we need to, we're still trying to figure out a nickname for him. I propose just calling him the Eliminator.
Yeah, that's good.
It's just all he does is just eliminates franchise after franchise has seen their seasons come to an end. And so the whole the name Patrick Mahomes, he's Baba Yaga.
Yes.
He's the boogeyman. He's the guy you tell ghost stories to scare your children to sleep.
And it's so funny how you can kind of see the momentum for that scared/hatred changing every time he wins. Then you get a whole new group of fans, right, that jump on the bandwagon of hating him and hating the Chiefs, and now Taylor Swift or the Chiefs get all the calls or just whatever it is that they want to complain about. It's like, all you have to do is click on a Twitter profile. You go, okay, you're a fan of an NFL team. Oh, then that's why you hate the Chiefs, because obviously you've lost some horrific, horrible, ridiculous game to the Chiefs. So, yep, I am with you there. He has been just checking them off, making a list and checking it twice.
I actually think it'd be interesting to if you could pull NFL fans and about their feeling. And I wonder what kind of a divide would be. Just simply, your favorite team is an AFC versus an NFC team. Right. I really think NFC.
Yes.
I mean, he's beat the Niners and the Eagles, so he's
right.
I think it's going to be a hard ask for him to eliminate every NFL team in the playoffs. That would be difficult. True. But
he'll have to get 16 rings or whatever.
But the AFC,
he'll give it a shot.
The AFC. I mean, I prefer never having the Raiders, Chargers, Broncos, be in a position to even play him in the playoffs. But, at some point it would be, it doesn't seem at all far-fetched for him to, eliminate every single AFC team in the playoffs.
Sure.
By the time he's, 35. I mean, I guess it would require the Jets to make the playoffs, which may be a tall order, but.
And the Patriots. That might be a tough one too now without old Bill. Speaking of Bill, let's talk about the Bills. They Obviously took care of the Steelers 31-17, a game that got a little closer than expected. The Bills jumped out 21-0. Steelers kind of scored with 10 minutes left to make it a 7-point game. It would get no closer than that. The Bills did also get a little banged up in this game. Terrell Bernard, their linebacker, and their punter Sam Martin picked up injuries in this game. We'll see, obviously, the length of both of those. But we talked about earlier that the Chiefs are going to have 2 extra days to prep for this game. The Bills played on Monday. The Chiefs played on Saturday. Games on Sunday. What are your initial thoughts about a 7th or an 8th matchup in the Mahomes era between the Bills and the Chiefs? The Bills having gone 3-1 in the regular season, but of course the Chiefs go 2-0 in the playoffs. So this is the 7th time. That's right. 7th game between them. We all immediately think of 13 Seconds First because that was just the most epic, ridiculous ending and game of all time. But, the Chiefs also denied the Bills a Super Bowl appearance in 2020 with that AFC Championship blowout. That's got to stick in their craw too. What are your thoughts on Chiefs v. Bills number 7?
Yeah, it's funny when I was looking at all the different teams, that Patrick Mahomes eliminated. It works out because he hasn't faced many teams twice. In fact, he's only faced one team twice, and that's the team that he's going to face a third time now. Like the Bills are looking at potentially being eliminated by Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs 3 times in 4 years.
Crazy.
And that psychologically, yes, they won the regular season game. Good for them. But I part of the fun of being a Chiefs fan right now is knowing it doesn't matter what our record is, what seed we are, where the game is.
Yeah.
That Patrick Mahomes is on your team. Every opponent you face is scared shitless.
As they should.
There's just, I mean, they absolutely should, but you can only imagine what's going to, if we lose to this guy again.
Right.
And yes, this time they can say this time is different because this time it's in Buffalo. Well, okay, it's in Buffalo. Patrick Mahomes has a better winning percentage on the road.
Yeah.
And not just winning percentage, but better passer rating, higher completion percentage, I believe. His ratio of touchdowns to interceptions, all slightly better on the road in his career.
If I may, doesn't that kind of go back to his back against the ropes type of mentality? 3rd down percentages and 4th quarter numbers, and every time the moment keeps right. I would consider a road game to be that type of profile for him, where it's
it does seem
okay,
to be.
I've got to step up.
It is crazy, when you look at statistically, how Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback ever, certainly with a certain number, as much playing time as he has, right? And yet somehow not only is he better in basically every high leverage breakdown you can do, like you said, in 3rd downs, in 4th quarters of close games, et cetera, but by actually a kind of absurdly significant margin. He's better. And it's the sample size. I mean, I wrote about this 2 or 3 years ago, and I was making the Michael Jordan comparison for the Ringer, that when you rank quarterbacks by whatever passer rating or adjusted not yet yards per attempt, et cetera, he's at the top, but it's the margin is reasonable. If you break it down to his EPA per play on 3rd down situations, he's double the second best. It's it's breaking the sport kind of level.
Yeah.
Now that gap probably was reduced this year because this was his worst year statistically through I would say through circumstances almost entirely out of his control. I think he let it get to him at times.
Yeah.
So maybe it affected him, but very quietly this game he played exceptionally well especially when you consider the weather. 23 of 41, his completion percentage was actually pretty low, but there were at least 3 or 4 drops in this game.
Big ones,
big one. Some of them were 3rd down ones. I mean, again, McColl didn't even try for a few. They had the touchdown called back. And then if you just watch the clips of all of his incompletions, or they were throwaways. Some of them were just deliberate throwaways.
Yeah.
The number of times he threw a ball that missed its target, extremely small. He was on his game. He is like to me, there is no indication that he is not as good a quarterback as he has been. And there's no reason to think at age 28, with the experience he has, with the athleticism he still possesses, his scrambling ability, his elusiveness in the pocket. He didn't get sacked in this game. And yeah, okay, we don't want to read too much into it. The Dolphins were Justin Houston played in this game. So their defensive line had some issues. And
they were banged up.
Yeah, Donovan Smith looked great. I'll tell you that. Like he looked like an all-star left tackle there, but I don't think that was entirely him. But the pocket was generally there for Mahomes, but he played extremely well. I think that this game being on the road doesn't concern me. If anything, it'll just be it'll just make Bills fans that much more nervous because they have to watch it in person. The weather's I'm hearing 15 to 20 degrees. It'll be cold, which is fine. We'll see if there's a snow element that just introduces randomness, but I would be very happy with clear conditions and just cold. I don't feel that home field advantage. I mean, it's always great to have it on your side, but I don't feel that the lack of it is really going to be an issue here at all.
Does it bother you at all, Rany, or give you any additional anxiety when you know that the Chiefs are 2-0 against the Bills in the playoffs? Obviously, one of those required an all-time 13-second comeback and winning a coin toss to be able to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. But does it give you any anxiety at all? Obviously, listen, we all know that Bills fans are feeling it, right? They know that we're 2-0 against them in the playoffs. They know Patrick Mahomes is coming to town. I get it. They won't admit it, but they're feeling a little anxious. Does it give you any anxiety at all to face a team that you've beaten twice in the playoffs, but that is good? I mean, we know the Bills are good, and I watched the game today. I mean, they're riding a win streak where they essentially have been playing basically playoff games for a month or more because they were really on the brink of elimination, and they've been able to pull those games out, but they haven't really played an impressive game since they beat the Chiefs barely. They blew out the Cowboys, but they haven't really played a super impressive game. What's kind of your confidence level facing up against this Bills team?
I'm reasonably confident about playing the Bills in general. Like you said, that win against the Chiefs, they may not even make the playoffs without that.
Right.
And that started them, they had lost to the Eagles in overtime, their previous game. They were 6-6 going in. They win that game, and then they blew out the Cowboys 31-10 the next week. But we just saw with the Cowboys, the Cowboys, there may have been a little bit of a paper tiger with their defense.
Yeah, right.
And then they beat the Chargers by 2 points.
Yep.
The Patriots,
the Easton Stick Chargers.
The Easton Stick Chargers. They actually struggled to beat the Patriots.
Yep.
They did beat the Dolphins, but that game was a little bit close, and that was for the division. But having what we saw from the Dolphins and how they were playing late in the year, that doesn't look nearly as impressive. And then they beat the Steelers comfortably today, but after being up 21-0 the Steelers kind of made a game of it.
And no TJ Watt. You started
Mason
quarterback.
These are not we are the best. They have not played a team, remotely as good as we are since that, right? You go back before that, they destroyed the Jets 32-6. Okay, yeah, I don't know if that's a Zach Wilson game. I don't think it matters if it was a Zach Wilson game or a Trevor Siemian game. They lost to the Broncos.
I believe that was actually a Tim Boyle game, but I'd have to double check. But in any case,
does it matter? No. They and then going back, what's their most impressive win of the season? Well, they beat the Dolphins 48-20 in week 4. That might have been the week after the Dolphins had put up 70 and people thought they were the best team in football. But just from what we saw from the head-to-head matchup, where the Chiefs made so many self-inflicted errors and still lost by 3 points.
Yep.
Right. It was that doesn't worry me. What worries me is Josh Allen.
Right.
What worries me is the guy today just scored a 52-yard rushing touchdown where, it was, we think of him as a guy who's just so big and strong, he can sort of bowl over people. And he certainly has that in the club in his bag, but he also has I'm just going to run faster than you and then basically make a cut back like a running back and completely lose a defender and then fight an open lane and then basically beat everyone to the end zone. That's kind of scary, but again, we're comparing the Steelers defense minus TJ Watt to the Chiefs defense. And this is to me I'm betting on the Chiefs defense here. I'm betting that they will, Spags will have a way to game plan for him, because you have to game plan for the broken play. You have to game plan for Josh Allen as a runner,
Sure.
which is different because it's a broken play almost by definition. They might have a few designed runs, certainly, but most of what you worry about with Josh Allen is the broken play where he just takes off upfield, and whether that means you have to have a constant spy on him, or confuse him in other ways, I don't know. Or you just accept the fact that, once or twice in a game he's gonna pick up 20 or 30 yards on the ground, and that's just the price you pay to contain him otherwise with the passing game. So he's the wild card here, and I think this is going to be obviously even though the Dolphins scored more points and had one of the best offenses in football, just from a point standpoint, this I think will be a much greater test for our defense than what we saw against Miami.
I agree. And I was thinking about their weapons just as I was kind of preparing this game. And I mean, Diggs has kind of been down a little bit, but they're both their tight ends. Both Knox and Kincaid are both very, very good. We all know what Gabe Davis is capable of, even though it's just because he runs behind idiot defenders. It's not really that he's a good wide receiver. I think Gabe Davis is one of the biggest fraud performers in big games I've ever seen. He just, I don't know what happens, but
did you say in big games?
In big games, big games,
dude, he scored 200 yards in the.
I know, and that was one of the biggest fraud performances I've ever seen. He just ran right by that idiot from that we sent to the Vikings afterwards. What was that guy? He looked like Patrick Mahomes microwaved. You know who I'm talking about? Mike Hughes.
Breland?
Mike Hughes.
Mike Hughes. Yeah,
he just ran right by him, and Mike Hughes fell down. And anyway, my point being,
Tyrann Mathieu was out that game.
Tyrann Mathieu wasn't out that game. He was out after the first drive,
right.
In a game that they said they game planned entirely for Mathieu to be the linchpin of the defense, and then first drive he gets concussion.
Go on. Sorry.
Is just that the weapons around him. You've also got James Cook, who's been playing very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Khalil Shakir, who scored this pinball touchdown today.
Yeah. That was impressive
just
too.
Very, very impressive. I mean, he's got the secondary weapons that the Chiefs, after having, Pacheco, Rice, and Kelsey, don't have. They don't match them 6 deep on the weapons. So not only is Josh Allen probably the most physically impressive quarterback I've ever seen, just from pure traits, but then they've got guys on offense that can take a broken play and house it. And so that's the part I'm worried about, is that their depth on offense, their pieces are pretty impressive to me.
Yeah, I think that's, that is the matchup of this game. Their offensive weapons against our defense. And in the first matchup, I mean, we held them to 20 points. And, I think that my expectation, my thesis for why I'm still pretty confident that the Chiefs can win this game is that the Chiefs offense as it is constructed today, I am confident in saying we'll get to 21 points. And, the defense has already shown the ability to hold this Bills team to under 21 points.
Yeah.
And, ultimately that's, that's what it takes. I think this is going to be, I don't know, a 24-17 game seems like a reasonable expectation. It's not going to be the 42-36 shootout that we had, just 2 years ago. God, it feels like a little longer.
Yes.
But this is a very different team, and I think finally maybe after this the way they strangled the life out of the Dolphins is that the national perception is catching up to the reality that this is a team that is a defense first ball club. But I think this is a game where they can really really put that message out that they are built around their defense if they can shut Josh Allen down in a way they haven't done before in the playoffs.
Completely agreed. Rany, once again, super appreciate you breaking down the playoffs with us. For anyone listening, I haven't plugged your Twitter account in a while. That is at Jazayerli. Hopefully, schedules permitting, we can talk next week about either the AFC Championship preview or what the hell went wrong in Buffalo.
Well, as long as we're talking, that means that the Chiefs we're playing. Hopefully we'll continue playing. So I'm always happy to talk to you guys, especially in January and February. So
Yes.
So we'll talk one way or the other. I may have something coming out at the Ringer here sometime in the next week or two. I'm hoping this week. We'll see where that leads. But just keep an eye on my Twitter feed or refresh the Ringer. It'll be about the Chiefs, obviously. That I'm a one trick pony at this point, but it's a really good trick. Writing about the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs in the twilight of my writing career has been quite the way to ride off into the sunset. It's been very enjoyable.
It is our favorite trick, so we appreciate it. We will be plugging that when that comes out, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good, guys.